Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest from you coming out of the UK, Chidi. He's going to talk to us all about business growth strategy. He's an accountant by trade and profession, but he's going to talk to us about leveraging technology, mindset, business growth momentum here for all the entrepreneurs looking to grow and scale their business. So, Chidi, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah. So I know briefly, just talk about your company, what you do, how you got there, and how the audience can benefit.
Sure. So if I go way back, I didn't know I'm an accountant by trade, but I actually didn't want to be an accountant because I thought it was really boring. But ultimately, I just felt it when I was studying. I liked more the numbers area of things, and then I discovered being a qualified accountant, which seemed to guarantee me a certain income. So I went down that route, and I wanted to work in the big firms. I worked in some of the big banks, and as time progressed, I I learned a lot from them, but I also craved to be free and be out there. And that's when I set up my practice during COVID, or just about the time of COVID. And that's what we do now. We help businesses, help them with their tax advice and growth strategies.
Yeah. It's really interesting because what I really love is I love how you describe the accounting profession, but you can I mean you can apply it to anything. So I love how you found your niche. So a lot of some of the audience there are CEOs and they've got businesses, tech entrepreneurs, and they want to know kind of like effective strategies for accelerating business growth. So what, kind of give us the overlay of the land.
Well, I think the biggest one I've found in terms of growth is really around the goal that we're shooting for. And I think what I find is a lot of times is where business owners who are already in business and they find it quite tough. There's a lot going on. They're quite busy. And so when you ask them, what's next or where do you want to get to? It's always kind of like, I'll do 20% more, 10% more. We can grow. I get one more staff member. So it's almost like you're already constrained by the box that you're in. And so your imagination just pushes you a little bit further out of that box, right? But when I flip this on its head and we're not talking about where you are, if you kind of get someone to just for a second, just imagine if what do you want for yourself, your life, your family, and then what you find is a big goal comes out, and then once you flip that onto your personal goals, flip that onto the business goals, you then find some. I give you just to bring this to life. I'll give you an example. I spoke to a guy who was a fitness trainer, and we had a conversation. And he wanted, and then we said, look, he told me what he was doing. He had a few clients in the gym, and then we said, look, what do you want to be doing? Like, what do you want from your life? He wanted to buy a flat. He wanted to, he wanted this amount of, money to take out. He wanted 100K and so on. So then it's like, okay, you want 100K. Then you flip that on his head and we end up with a business that's going to provide him, that's going to make turnover 400K, like 350 to 400K. And that was way out of his imagination because you think 100K, I can take 100K, but actually you can't. And so in the end, the strategies that came out were now like, it's not going to work in the gym. We need online, we need marketing. And so those are the kind of things that brings about when people kind of let themselves really feel for those goals or dream really, and then try and achieve them.
Yeah, I love that. And what's interesting is, kind of I've noticed as I reach the limits of the threshold, it's kind of like, do you go forward or you go back? And it's kind of like your emotional temperature, your thermostat and the threshold. I think people call it the what is it called? The success barriers or
Yeah, yeah.
fear of success. So then next question is what are common pitfalls businesses face when trying to scale and how can they avoid them?
I'll give you a couple. Good question. The first one is cash. I think cash flow, like when you look at the amount of businesses that go under, the bulk of them are cash flow related. And where it's really unfortunate is for businesses who have a model that works. So they have a way of getting clients or customers or selling products, but they somehow slip and go under because they run out of cash. And so being able to manage cash flow, which is different to just looking at your bank account, but as businesses start to scale and things start to move really quickly, cash flow needs change and they vary. And not being able to forecast that can be a problem and it could be critical. So that's one thing that people miss out on. And the second one, which also can satisfy the cash flow needs, is just data. It's just business owners being able to understand how you're performing and the value in that data, the juice that's in that data of your actual business performance. But a lot of businesses, they kind of feel that that's something that the big guys or the big firms could need to do. And so they just think I'm a small business owner. So I'm just going to wait till the deadline of when my accounts are due, which is many months after the year end, to actually know what my business is performing, what my business is doing. And that at that point, that data is obsolete. And so there's a lot of missed opportunities to analyze our margins and all sorts of juicy data that's in our numbers. So it's really getting that habit in place is something that I feel business owners miss out on if you're not already doing it.
Yeah, which kind of brings me to my next question is because this is a business entrepreneurship podcast about mindsets. And so talk about some of the mindsets, the key mindsets that help entrepreneurs, whether it's in the day-to-day, for example, financial health, stability, cash flow, tax,
Yeah.
and also when it comes to like vision and strategy, talk about kind of some of the top three mindsets.
That's a good one. So in terms of mindset, I mean, I think that is something that is impacts life. I mean, but more so in business, where one of the key elements of the mindset is really getting people to, and it happens to all of us, is really being able to adopt or be that person. We have that vision, and some people don't because they just start off a business. It just comes out of a need, and you just kind of going day to day, but you haven't really adopted the mindset. You haven't really visualized yourself in the suit or dress of that person who is achieving what you want to achieve.
Hmm.
And sometimes it goes as far back as saying you haven't even thought about what you want to achieve. But I think once you put yourself in those shoes and start to live it, you will start to see changes in the way you think, in the things you approach, in the energy you have. Just as an example, when I think of a business that's growing, it's like a plane on a runway. So plane, I mean, back in the days, right? When you go on a runway, when the plane's taking off, everything is shaking. Everything is shaking. The bloody lockers at the top are about to pop open. That's the force that's required as the plane before it takes off, right? That's the amount of energy that plane needs to go through before it takes off. So it's really, once we visualize, like the plane decides where it's going to go, then we would go through what we need to go through to be able to get there. But without adopting that, without visualizing it, we kind of rob ourselves of that effort, that energy.
Yeah, I love that. Which kind of as a follow-up question, and I love talking about technology. And so one thing is how can businesses leverage digital tools and technology to drive business expansion? And specifically, what I'm interested in is software, and a lot of like for a lot of companies they use peoples and processes, but now a lot of companies are using software and AI. So talk about this trend and what it means for businesses scale, but also what it means for the impact on human lives.
That's a great question. So just to help this land, I'm gonna give you an analogy. And it's basically I've got a friend of mine who's a consultant, right? And when he goes to operate, he arrives and someone's got his scrubs. He puts the scrubs on, the gloves, all the bits that he needs to put on, and he goes in. operates, and he walks out, and then he just kind of gets rid of his stuff, and he's on, right? So he's there for the operation, and I think I love that, because I believe that's how business owners need to start to think about themselves. You need to start to think about what tools are going to help me to do my job in the best way, but also what do I need to be doing and not doing, if that makes sense. So that then we're talking about admin, we're talking about bookkeeping, we're talking about all those things. As a business owner, I mean, it's not a must, but where possible, just try and get rid of those things and focus on delivering the business. And that would then apply to all bits of software that would really not, because you can get carried away, you can just be throwing all tools in the box, but it's really starting to understand which tools would help us take some of the admin away, help with the impression of the business, which is linking to our goals. If we want bigger, we need to be presenting bigger. So the list is long. I mean, for me, the winners are always around your accounting software, around anything that's giving you insight on your sales and your costs to be able to improve that. But it goes wider than any software that would help your process, but also people that would help your process.
I love that. It's really, really, really powerful because I know technology and particular software and AI can really help scale your company, but then you also have to think about the impact on human lives, and and then say that I mean, if you use it correctly, it can help enhance everybody, and if you use
Yeah.
it incorrectly, then it can really cause a lot of harm.
Mm.
Yes. Then next question is, kind of lessons from past experiences. Can you share success stories of business that turned around its health with your help, or and what are some lessons you've learned from failed businesses, and how can others avoid those mistakes?
No, that's it. So, and I think this is what when I talk about the importance of cash flow, this is one real example where I had a business owner who was a property business, and at the point that we noticed this, they were starting to, you know, we have GST, it's called GST over there, GST taxes. But in the UK, it's called VAT. So you collect this, so you invoice and you add your taxes on top, and then you essentially pay all or part of that over to the government. So essentially, if you get $100 or £100 or whatever it is, and you add another 20, because UK is 20%, then you've collected 120. That 20 you've collected is essentially not yours. So when someone gets to the point to pay their GST tax or their VAT and they haven't got the money, that's because they've spent it. They spent money that's not yours. And this was happening over and over again because this client, so you try and get on try and understand what the reason behind it. And he was just struggling with cash flow, with business, timing of things like that. So it was really about just spending time with him to really understand where those problems are coming from, building a plan. So by the end of it, we be able to clarify his goals, build a plan, and identify some of the problems that were not aligned to that plan. And it was quite emotional working with him because he was on the brink with his relationships, and his business was already at risk. But we managed to turn that around, which was great. And that's the bit that we really enjoy doing, is really helping businesses thrive, right?
Yeah. Yes. Really powerful. Kind of round it out, talk about how people can closing thoughts, and how can people find you and follow you on your socials, check out your work, and so on.
Yeah, so I think in closing thoughts is I mean I'm every in my journey so far with this business, I've met some really great business owners, some brave people kind of going against a system that we all like operate under for many years. And so it takes courage to go against it and push through all the challenges that they face. But it's really my advice would be to always think about the end destination. So it's almost like where do we want to be in 5 years? Take time to think about that. Do we want to sell the business in 10 years? Do we want to be earning this much in 10 years or 5 years? Do we want to have this much time to ourselves, right? Because sometimes we do this because we want some freedom, we want some time freedom. But then in the end, along the journey, you forget about why you started it and you end up working all hours around the clock. But it's really taking time to understand the reasonings or going back to the reasons why we got into this. And then it's then a case of the strategy that then forms your strategy. It's now a question of how am I going to get there? So people like your accountants or if you're in UK, we can help you, but essentially using the resources available to you because it's one of those things I always tell people, if you're in a situation, if you don't do anything about it, it's unlikely to change.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, here in the States, we're going through so much turmoil, and I think it's kind of this shift between the old and new. And I know UK's adopted a lot of progressive policies and innovation. So, really interesting. And for all the audience listening, Chidi for coming on and sharing his expertise and insight. And be sure to give his socials a like and follow. Check out his work. And thanks so much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me.